The doorbell buzzed, sharp and insistent, slicing through the quiet of Ezra's cramped Chicago apartment. He froze, paintbrush hovering over the half-finished canvas, a smear of cerulean blue dripping onto his jeans. It was 7:32 p.m. Who the hell delivered packages this late? Ezra set the brush down, wiping his hands on a rag as he shuffled to the door. The peephole revealed a delivery driver, his broad frame filling the frame, cap pulled low. Ezra opened the door, and the man thrust a small cardboard box into his hands with a quick, "Sign here." The driver's voice was low, warm, like a crackling fire, and Ezra caught a glimpse of hazel eyes before the guy turned away. He scribbled his name on the tablet, muttering a thanks, and the driver, name tag reading Caleb, was already halfway down the stoop. Ezra shut the door, tossing the package onto the cluttered coffee table. Another art supply order he couldn't really afford. He was 26, scraping by as a freelance illustrator in a city that chewed up dreamers like him. The canvas in the corner mocked him, unfinished, just like his life. He sighed, running a hand through his dark, messy hair, and returned to his painting. But the doorbell buzzed again. "What now?" Ezra muttered, irritation flaring. He yanked the door open, expecting a neighbor or a scam. Instead, Caleb stood there, holding nothing but a nervous smile. No package, no tablet, just him, his delivery uniform slightly wrinkled, his hands shoved deep in his pockets. "Did I forget something?" Ezra asked, brow furrowing. Caleb hesitated, his gaze flickering to the ground, then back to Ezra's face. "No, I just thought." He stopped, took a breath, and those hazel eyes locked onto Ezra's with an intensity that made his stomach flip. "Can I come in? Just for a minute?" Ezra blinked, caught off guard. Every rational instinct screamed to say no. Stranger, late night, Chicago's not exactly a trustful city. But something in Caleb's expression, raw and unguarded, held him. Against his better judgment, Ezra stepped aside. Sure. 1 minute." The apartment was a mess. Canvases stacked against walls, takeout containers littering the counter, a half-dead plant wilting in the corner. Caleb didn't seem to notice. He stood in the middle of the living room, hands still in his pockets, like he was trying to anchor himself. Ezra crossed his arms, waiting. "I don't usually do this," Caleb started, his voice quieter now. "I deliver, I leave. That's the job. But I saw your name on the package, Ezra Callahan, and he trailed off, rubbing the back of his neck. "I recognized it." Ezra's heart stuttered. "Recognized it? From where?" Caleb's lips twitched, a half-smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Lincoln High, class of 15. You were the kid always drawing in the back of math class, right? Never looked up from your sketchbook." Ezra froze. Lincoln High was a lifetime ago, a blur of small-town Indiana and secrets he'd buried deep. He'd been the quiet, artsy kid, head down, avoiding trouble. And Caleb, Ezra's mind raced, pulling up a vague memory of a football player, loud and confident, always surrounded by friends. Caleb Monroe, the guy who'd once stopped a bully from slamming Ezra's locker shut, but never said a word to him after. "You remember me?" Ezra asked, disbelief coloring his tone. "Yeah," Caleb said softly. "I always noticed you. Just never had the guts to say anything." The air shifted, heavy with something unspoken. Ezra's pulse quickened. He wasn't out in high school. Hell, he barely admitted it to himself back then. But Caleb's words, the way he stood there, vulnerable in a stranger's apartment, hinted at a story Ezra didn't know. He wanted to ask, to dig deeper, but the weight of the moment held him silent. Caleb took a step closer, his boots scuffing the hardwood. "I'm not here to freak you out. I've been driving past this building for months, delivering your packages, seeing your name. Tonight, I couldn't just walk away again." Ezra's throat tightened. He didn't know what to say, didn't know what Caleb wanted, or what he himself wanted. The room felt too small, the city outside too loud. "So, what now?" he asked, voice barely above a whisper. Caleb's eyes softened, a mix of hope and fear. "Can we talk? Just talk." Ezra nodded, unsure where this was going, but unable to turn back. He gestured to the couch, a lumpy thrift store find, and Caleb sat, his large frame making it look comically small. Ezra perched on the armrest, keeping distance, his mind racing. This wasn't just a delivery driver dropping off a package. This was something else entirely, something that could change everything. The silence stretched, thick and electric, as Ezra studied Caleb across the dim living room. The city's pulse thrummed outside. Car horns, a distant siren, the low hum of life that never slept. Caleb leaned forward, elbows on his knees, his hands clasped like he was holding himself together. "I owe you an explanation," Caleb said finally, his voice steady but laced with something raw. "Back in high school, I wasn't honest. Not with you. Not with anyone. Hell, not even with myself." Ezra's brow furrowed. He leaned back, arms still crossed, trying to piece together the puzzle of Caleb's words. "What do you mean, honest?" Caleb exhaled, a shaky sound. "I knew who I was deep down. But in a place like Lincoln, you didn't say it out loud. You didn't even think it too loud. I played football, dated cheerleaders, did all the things people expected. But I watched you, Ezra, in the halls in class. You were so free in your own way. Always drawing, always in your own world. I envied that." Ezra's chest tightened. He hadn't been free. He'd been terrified, hiding who he was behind sketchbooks and silence. But Caleb's confession cracked something open, a memory of stolen glances he'd never dared acknowledge. "You envied me," he said, almost laughing. "I was a nobody. You were you." Caleb's smile was bitter. "Yeah, well, me was a lie. I spent years pretending, trying to fit into a mold that didn't fit. After graduation, I left town, thought I could outrun it. Ended up here, driving trucks, delivering packages, still pretending. Until tonight." Ezra's fingers dug into his arms, grounding himself. "Why tonight?" Caleb looked at him, eyes steady now. "Because I'm tired, Ezra. Tired of running. Tired of seeing your name on those packages and wondering what might have been if I'd said something back then. I don't know if you even—" He stopped, swallowing hard. "I just needed to try." The words hung between them, heavy with possibility. Ezra's mind spun. He'd come out in college, found his footing in Chicago's art scene. But relationships? Those were messy, fleeting. He'd built walls, kept people at arm's length. Yet here was Caleb, tearing through those walls with nothing but honesty and a decade-old memory. "I don't know what to say," Ezra admitted, his voice soft. "This is a lot." Caleb nodded, standing. "I know. I didn't expect you to have an answer. I just needed to say it." He moved toward the door, pausing. "If you want me to leave, I will. No pressure." Ezra's heart pounded. He should let Caleb go, keep his life simple. But the thought of the door closing, of Caleb disappearing back into the city, felt like losing something he hadn't even realized he wanted. "Wait," he said, standing. "Don't go yet." Caleb turned, hope flickering in his eyes. Ezra gestured to the kitchenette. "Coffee? It's instant, but it's something." A small laugh broke from Caleb, easing the tension. "Yeah, coffee's good." They sat at the tiny kitchen table, mugs steaming between them. Ezra asked about Caleb's life since high school. Odd jobs, a stint in construction, now driving for a delivery service. Caleb asked about Ezra's art, his move to Chicago, his dreams. The conversation flowed, tentative at first, then easy, like they were picking up a thread left dangling years ago. But beneath the words, a current ran. Every glance, every brush of fingers as they passed the sugar, felt charged. Ezra caught himself watching Caleb's hands, strong and calloused, and wondered what it would be like to hold them. He pushed the thought away, but it lingered. As the clock ticked past 9 p.m., Caleb's phone buzzed, a reminder of his next delivery. He stood, reluctance in every line of his body. "I should go. Work." Ezra nodded, walking him to the door. "Thanks for coming back." Caleb smiled, soft and real. "Thanks for letting me in." The door closed, and Ezra leaned against it, heart racing. He didn't know what this was, friendship, something more, or just a moment that would fade. But for the first time in years, he felt alive, like the city outside was full of possibilities he'd forgotten how to see. The next morning, Ezra woke to the buzz of his phone. A text from an unknown number. "Hey, it's Caleb. Got your number from the delivery log. Hope that's okay. Coffee again sometime?" Ezra stared at the screen, a grin tugging at his lips. He typed back, "Yeah, coffee's good. Name a time." They met 3 days later at a cafe in Wicker Park, a cozy spot with mismatched chairs and the smell of roasted beans. Caleb was already there, nursing a black coffee, his delivery uniform swapped for a flannel shirt that made him look less like a stranger and more like someone Ezra could know. They talked for hours about everything and nothing. Music, movies, the way Chicago's winters could break you. Ezra found himself laughing, really laughing, for the first time in months. But there was a shadow in Caleb's eyes, a hesitation that surfaced when the conversation turned personal. Ezra pressed, gently, "You said you were running from something. What was it?" Caleb's fingers tightened around his mug. "My family. Small-town expectations. My daddy's old school. Thinks being gay is a choice, a sin. I tried to tell him once after high school. He didn't speak to me for a year." Ezra's heart ached. His own coming out had been messy, his mom supportive, his dad distant, but nothing like that. "I'm sorry," he said, meaning it. Caleb shrugged, but the pain was there. "I moved here to start over. Thought I could be myself. But it's hard, you know? You build habits, hiding who you are, even in a city like this." Ezra reached across the table, his hand brushing Caleb's. It was a small gesture, but it felt huge. "You don't have to hide with me." Caleb's eyes met his, and for a moment, the cafe faded away. Then Caleb pulled back, a nervous laugh breaking the spell. "You're going to make this hard, aren't you?" Ezra grinned, leaning back. "Maybe." Over the next few weeks, they fell into a rhythm. Caleb would text when his shift ended, and they'd meet, sometimes for coffee, sometimes for late-night walks along the lakefront. Ezra showed Caleb his favorite art galleries. Caleb took Ezra to a dive bar with the best jukebox in town. Each moment felt like a step towards something bigger, but neither named it. Not yet. One night, as they stood on a pier overlooking Lake Michigan, the city skyline glittering behind them, Caleb turned to Ezra. "You ever think about what you'd do if you weren't afraid?" Ezra's breath caught. The question hit too close. "All the time," he admitted. "I'd paint what I really feel, not what sells. I take more risks." Caleb's hand found his, fingers intertwining. "Me too," he said softly. "I'd stop running." They stood there, hands clasped, the wind carrying the weight of their words. Ezra wanted to kiss him, to close the distance, but fear held him back. What if this was too fast, too fragile? What if Caleb wasn't ready? Before he could decide, Caleb's phone buzzed. He glanced at it, his face falling. "It's my brother. He's in town. Wants to meet up." Ezra sensed the shift, the tension in Caleb's voice. "You okay with that?" Caleb's jaw tightened. "Not really, but he's family." They parted ways, Caleb promising to text later. But as Ezra walked home, a knot formed his chest. Something told him Caleb's past wasn't done with him yet. Caleb didn't text for 2 days. Ezra tried not to worry, but the silence gnawed at him. He threw himself into his art, painting feverishly, but the colors felt wrong, the lines unsteady. Finally, on the 3rd day, a message came. "Can I come over? Need to talk." When Caleb arrived, he looked drained, his usual warmth dimmed. They sat on the couch, and Caleb told Ezra about his brother, Matt. "He's like my dad," Caleb said, voice flat. "Showed up out of nowhere, talking about family, duty, how I need to fix myself. Said Dad's sick, want me to come home." Ezra's stomach twisted. "What did you say?" "Told him I'm not going back." "Not to that." Caleb's voice cracked. "But it's not that simple. Dad's got cancer. They didn't tell me until now." Ezra reached for his hand, squeezing it. "I'm so sorry, Caleb." Caleb shook his head, pulling away. "I don't know what to do. Part of me wants to see him, to try and make peace. But I can't go back to pretending. I can't." "You don't have to," Ezra said fiercely. "You're not that kid anymore. You're here. You're you. And you're enough." Caleb looked at him, eyes shining with unshed tears. "You make it sound so easy." "It's not," Ezra admitted. "But you're not alone. For the first time, Caleb didn't pull away when Ezra touched him. Instead, he leaned in, their foreheads touching, breaths mingling. The moment stretched, fragile and perfect, until Caleb kissed him. It was soft at first, tentative, then deeper, a release of everything they'd been holding back. When they pulled apart, Ezra's heart was pounding. "Stay," he whispered. Caleb nodded, and they spent the night talking, kissing, wrapped in each other. It wasn't just physical. It was trust, vulnerability, a promise neither had spoken yet. But the shadow of Caleb's family lingered, and Ezra knew this was only the beginning. The next morning, Caleb left for work, promising to call. But as days turned into a week, his texts grew sporadic. Ezra tried not to panic, but doubt crept in. Was Caleb pulling away? Had the kiss been too much? Or was his family dragging him back into a life he'd fought to escape? Ezra threw himself into a new painting, a swirling mix of blues and golds, inspired by the lakefront night with Caleb. It was bold, raw, the kind of work he'd always been afraid to show. He sent a photo of it to Caleb, hoping for a response. Hours later, a text came. "It's beautiful. Like you. I'm sorry I've been distant. Can we meet?" They met at the pier again, the city alive around them. Caleb looked worn but determined. "I'm going back to Indiana," he said, and Ezra's heart sank. "Just for a few days. To see my dad. To tell him who I am, no hiding." Ezra swallowed, fear and pride warring inside him. "You sure?" Caleb nodded. "I have to. For me. For us." The word us hit Ezra like a wave. He pulled Caleb close, kissing him fiercely. "I'll be here when you get back," he promised. As Caleb walked away, Ezra felt the weight of hope and fear. This wasn't just about them anymore. It was about Caleb facing his past and Ezra trusting him to come back. Ezra tried to keep busy while Caleb was gone. He worked on commissions, met friends for drinks, but his mind kept drifting to Caleb, to the courage it took to face a family that might reject him. He painted late into the night, his apartment filled with canvases that screamed with color and emotion, his best work yet. On the fourth day, Caleb called. His voice was heavy, strained. "It didn't go well," he said. "Dad wouldn't listen. Said I'm a disappointment." Matt just stood there, didn't say a word. Ezra's chest ached. "Where are you now?" "Back in Chicago." "Can I see you?" Caleb arrived at Ezra's apartment an hour later, his eyes red-rimmed. They didn't speak at first, just held each other, the silence saying more than words could. Finally, Caleb spoke, his voice raw. "I told them everything. Who I am, who I want to be. They didn't want to hear it, but I said it anyway. I'm proud of you," Ezra whispered, meaning every word. Caleb's laugh was shaky. "Feels like I lost them, but I found something else. You." Ezra's heart swelled. They kissed, slower this time, like they were memorizing each other. The night unfolded in quiet moments, shared stories, soft touches, the kind of intimacy that felt like a lifeline. But the next morning, reality crept back. Caleb's phone buzzed with a message from his brother. "Dad's worse. Come home." Caleb stared at the screen, torn. "I don't want to go back," he said, "but I don't want to regret not trying." Ezra nodded, understanding the weight of it. "Do what you need to. I'm not going anywhere." Caleb left again, promising to return soon. Ezra threw himself into his art, channeling his fear and hope into every brushstroke. He started a new piece, a portrait of Caleb, strong, vulnerable, his hazel eyes alive with determination. It was a risk, pouring so much of himself into it, but Ezra was done playing it safe. Days passed with no word from Caleb. Ezra's doubt grew, a gnawing fear that Caleb might not come back, that his family might pull him back into their world. He checked his phone obsessively, jumping at every notification. Finally, a package arrived. No note, just Caleb's name on the delivery slip. Ezra's heart raced. Was this a sign? Or just another delivery? That night, Caleb called. "I'm coming back tomorrow," he said, voice lighter. "Dad's stable for now." I told him I'm not changing who I am. He didn't like it, but he listened. That's something. Ezra exhaled, relief flooding him. "I'm glad you're okay." "I'm more than okay," Caleb said. "I'm ready to start living. With you if you'll have me." Ezra smiled, tears pricking his eyes. "Yeah, I'll have you." Caleb returned to Chicago, and the city felt different, brighter, fuller. They spent every spare moment together, building something real. Ezra's apartment became their sanctuary, filled with laughter, late-night talks, and the smell of paint and coffee. Caleb started sketching, too, his rough lines a contrast to Ezra's fluid ones, but they worked side by side, creating together. One evening, Ezra showed Caleb the portrait he'd painted. Caleb stared at it, silent, then pulled Ezra into a fierce hug. "No one's ever seen me like that," he whispered. "You're easy to see," Ezra said, kissing him softly. But life wasn't perfect. Caleb's family kept calling, pulling at him. His father's health worsened, and guilt gnawed at him. Ezra faced his own struggles. His art was gaining attention, but galleries wanted safer, less personal work. He refused to compromise, even when it meant losing opportunities. One night, over takeout in Ezra's kitchen, Caleb dropped a bombshell. "I got an offer," he said, staring at his plate. "A better job, managing a delivery hub. It's in Seattle." Ezra's fork froze midair. "Seattle? Yeah, better pay, better hours." But Caleb looked up, eyes searching. "I don't want to go without you." The words hit Ezra like a freight train. Leave Chicago? His home, his friends, his art scene? But the thought of losing Caleb was worse. "I need time to think," he said, voice tight. Caleb nodded, giving him space. The next few days were tense, both tiptoeing around the question. Ezra painted furiously, trying to find answers in his art. He imagined a life in Seattle. New city, new start with Caleb. But fear whispered, what if it didn't work? What if they lost themselves? Finally, Ezra made a decision. He invited Caleb to the lakefront, the same pier where they'd first held hands. The city sparkled behind them, a reminder of everything they'd built. "I'm scared," Ezra admitted, "but I'm more scared of not trying. I'll go with you." Caleb's face lit up, and he kissed Ezra, the wind wrapping around them like a promise. They stood there, holding each other, ready to face whatever came next. Seattle was a whirlwind. They found a small apartment overlooking Puget Sound, the kind of place that felt like a fresh start. Ezra's art thrived in the new city, his bold, emotional pieces finding a home in local galleries. Caleb settled into his new job, his confidence growing as he left his past behind. But it wasn't all easy. They argued sometimes about money, about time, about the little things that pile up when you share a life. Each fight tested them, but each reconciliation made them stronger. They learned each other's rhythms, their flaws, their dreams. One rainy evening, a year after moving, Caleb took Ezra to a quiet cafe. Over steaming mugs, he pulled out a small box. Not a ring, not yet, but a keychain with a tiny paintbrush charm. "For our next adventure," Caleb said, grinning. "Wherever it takes us." Ezra laughed, tears in his eyes. "You're such a sap." "Yeah, but you love it," Caleb teased, pulling him close. They walked home through the rain, hand in hand, the city alive around them. Ezra thought back to that first night when a delivery driver had knocked on his door and changed everything. It wasn't just a package Caleb had delivered. It was hope, courage, a chance at love. Their story wasn't perfect, but it was theirs. And as they stood on their balcony, watching the rain over the water, Ezra knew they'd face every storm together. They'd built something real, something worth fighting for, and no distance, geographic or emotional, could break it.